Good morning, viewers. All of you in this period must be busy in compliances under GST to ensure that the annual returns as well as the audit, which is required under 35(5), is completed within September. There may be an extension, there may not be an extension, we do not know. But we need to understand ITC properly so as to ensure that this client is safeguarded and claims of credit are made properly, and where they are in doubt to be availed and reversed. This is to ensure that the client will be safeguarded. So I would look at what was the past law, what is the objective of GST, and whether it is nearer to the SENVAT law of excise and service tax or the local VAT laws. We will also look at some of the relevant case laws of the past and look at where ITC in GST is having a problem, and also the importance of credit on capital goods as well as reversal under Rule 42. VAT is a law where the cascading was attempted to be reduced, and it was introduced in 2003. First was Haryana, last was UP, I think. 2003 to 2007 it went on. And it was also bought to encourage tax compliance, and it did have its good points because the impact of tax at each stage was less, and therefore the need to evade also came down to some extent. However, as far as VAT was concerned, it was provided as a deduction of the tax paid, whereas in SENVAT credit, which was applicable to excise and service tax, it was bought with a specific reason to remove cascading and make goods competitive. These two diametrically, you could say, different philosophies are the reason why we have a lot of problems in GST also. In VAT, it was a deduction or a concession, whereas in SENVAT, it was a right or a privilege. Let's look at some of the case laws which give some clarity on this matter. There are two major case laws. One is on Eicher Motors, another is Daiichi Karkaria. And these, both of them were in relation to the SENVAT law, not the VAT law. So in the SENVAT, it was clear that it was more of a right, and it was said to be indefeasible right, and there was no correlation between the raw material, final product, etc. That is what was held by the Supreme Court in Daiichi Karkaria. In the case of Eicher Motors, also in the same year, 1999, there was an observation: is credit is as good as cash, cash. It's as good as cash paid. There were some other decisions. For example, what about if some little bit of the input is contained in the sludge which is thrown away? Even then, full SENVAT credit was allowed because of the philosophy of avoiding cascading. There were, however, some decisions in VAT, because in VAT it was a concession or a deduction, where there were provisions which did not allow one to take credit if the selling debtor had not paid VAT. These may not be applicable to GST because in GST the philosophy is non-cascading. That's what was stated when the GST amendment bill was first time introduced in the parliament in 2010. There were two objectives. Objective A was to broad-based taxation. Objective B was to ensure that there's no cascading. Very famous case of Formica India had set out that procedures cannot deny the credit. And whether this is relevant in GST, in my understanding, very much relevant in GST, unless there is a prescribed procedure which you are unable or you are not following. If you are unable to follow, you will still be eligible for the credit. But if there's a procedure and you don't follow, then your credit may be denied. As I said, objective of GST was this, and You know, this has a long history. In 1986, pro forma credit came, 87 ModVat came, 94 under excise trader could pass on the credit and capital goods were added. Then you had VAT coming, and SENVAT was revised to make it more, what I would say, industry friendly. GST is inclined to SENVAT scheme. Let's look at what are the transactions where you may have a problem in this audit. Transitional credit, whether we can take up to 30th June 2020 is a question which many people ask. Various courts have laid down that if you attempted to claim the transition credit and the portal did not allow, and you had some proof of that, then you should be allowed to take the credit either on the portal or manual by way of a manual application. There was also one decision where they said that the limitation should not apply because it's a new law. People are not clear. Portal is not supporting. Therefore, only the normal limitation should apply, which is 30th June. However, this is something which Supreme Court has stayed for the time being, and we don't know when a decision will come. While transiting from the old system, there was also a limit for about a year, where they said old stocks you cannot take credit. Now this was struck down as improper in the case of Siddharth by high courts, and I think it's a good law. That means if you have stocks beyond 1 year also you can make a claim for it. The condition of 1 year was also discussed in the case of Chemplast by the Madras High Court. There is also one more point which is very clear, that if you look at section 16, there are 4 conditions. One of the conditions is receipt. Receipt will also include constructive receipt, and in some cases like AMC, the day you agree, it would said to have been received. There could also be sometimes that the person who receives is not taking the credit, but the person who was billed takes the credit. This can happen when agents are involved or you send for job work directly to the job worker. Once they receive the goods, you are eligible for credit. There's also one problem in credit on advances. Advances, normally people don't issue invoices. However, if the person receiving the invoice, as the person receiving the advance raises the invoice, for example, I receive an advance of 11,80,000 and I raise an invoice for mentioning as advance, and I mention 10 lakhs as the base and ₹1,80,000 as the GST on that. The person who paid me the advance will be eligible for the credit. There is also one more issue which is there in the law, which is a little difficult sometimes. There is a provision which says that if I'm totally exempt, then I cannot take the credit at all. However, I am not very sure of the exemption, or there are some minor conditions and I get a doubt, and therefore I don't claim the exemption. I avail the credit and charge the tax. In such cases, am I eligible for the input tax credit? The answer to that lies in the old case laws, wherein they said once the state is accepting the taxes, the credit cannot be denied. So what is going to happen in all these cases? Is this the full list of credit? No, this is only an illustrative list to give you an idea as to how you can look at the credit as such. So a lot of challenges in GST. Courts have been normally favoring the SSEs. However, since the department goes to Supreme Court in all cases, at times this becomes a little uncertain. Earlier law will give you a lot of idea on earlier law in SENVAT credit, which was applicable to the manufacturers and the service providers, possibly can give you a lot of direction. And these are all settled law in the old law. They possibly will also get settled in GST is what I understand. What happens when I use or intend to use in my business? If you look at the GST enabling provision of section 16, you will find it's much wider than the SENVAT. So here in the GST law, credit could be taken whether you use or intend to use. And also, very importantly, course or furtherance of business. Remember, in the central excise, it was only manufacture. Up to the stage of manufacture, you could take credit. Since in GST, it is not manufacture but supply, and supply can be done at every stage. That means the last supply happens when the retailer sells to the consumer in certain goods, and wherever else it will go to the as a captive consumption for the same industry or different industries. There anyway, it is well within the stages of supply. Tax charged and paid. Whether the tax paid can be verified by the portal. As of now, they have made many thought process where they have looked at introducing GSTR 2A, which is not envisaged in the law. Now they are thinking of 2B, which also is not envisaged in the law. But will this ensure that I can confirm from the portal without too much difficulty that my supplier has paid the tax? In my understanding, this may not be possible in this scheme as well as in the new scheme, which is proposed to be put in place. Supplier, whether he has furnished a return, this we can verify in the portal itself. It's quite easy, and nowadays softwares which are there will tell you this at a click of a button. Can I claim the GST credit on capital goods and also claim the depreciation on that credit? No, I cannot claim on gross. I have to only claim on the net. And therefore, there is a possibility for me to rectify it by offering the tax, income tax on those on that 18%. 18% I'm using as a average applicable to most of the items. So there I can rectify the income tax return and still claim the GST credit on the capital goods. Debit notes issued in 1920 are to be accounted by 2020. This is very important. Beyond that, the debit notes will not be allowed. So if there is any GST charge in the debit note, that may get lost. Is that the intention of the law? It is not. However, the provision still has to be put in place to ensure that this, what I would say, unfairness is removed in the law. Sometimes what happens that you think that your product is exempted, or you think that it is not liable because nobody is paying. There is a circular which says this, whatever the reason you have taken not to pay, and then you would not have taken the credit also. After a few years, say 3 years or 4 years, there's a demand made. Can you then set off the old credit? As of now, the law doesn't allow it, but in my understanding, this is something which should be allowed, and it will be totally unfair because whatever is tried to be collected is the net tax, not the gross tax. In fact, in a recent case of interest, the High Court and also the GST Council and subsequently the government itself has made the interest only on the net. Then why not the tax itself only on the net? For this, there's no case law at present, but I'm sure case laws will come in future. In the GST law, unfortunately, many of these procedural aspects have been brought into the Act itself. And we also have a lot of delegated legislation, which was not there in the earlier indirect tax laws. Delegated legislation is that the Parliament does not decide. But there are provisions that such delegated legislation should pass through the understanding of the Parliament. We are not very sure whether this is happening also. Therefore, the delegated legislation, which is driven by the bureaucrats, would be revenue biased and not in line with the taxpayer. In this country, we are hammering the taxpayers who are honest in the name of plugging loopholes of the dishonest. Dishonest are still getting away because the provisions will be vague. They will not stand the scrutiny of Article 14 or Article 19, very badly drafted, and therefore they need frequent amendments. Retrospective amendments are made. That also is challenged. Sometimes the law itself is an impossibility, as we have discussed earlier. It can also be arbitrary. For example, there are instances which you must be reading in the newspaper where the bank accounts are attached even though it is not in line with the law. The law is very clear. It can be attached only in the 3 or 4 circumstances, but the officers using their discretion, which is not there, they attach. Once they attach, court comes and says open it. Even after it says open it, some officers do not open it. Then again you have to go back to the court and put a contempt proceeding. Many SSCs do not do this. Therefore, this law at present is loaded against the taxpayer. There is also one more provision which has been put 180 days. If I don't pay the supplier in 180 days, in these COVID days when you don't have money to pay your salaries, are you going to pay the supplier? Okay, they have given some extension. But when am I going to recover? Maybe I'll start recovering from June of 2021. And my normalcy will come by that time. But what happens in between? I'll have to reverse all the credits which I have taken because I have not made payments to the suppliers. This is nonsense provision. In fact, many of the states have objected to it in the GST Council. And finally, they decided that this will help the small and medium practitioners. How will it help? The small and medium practitioners will lose all the credit which they have got because they are the people who are impacted with cash flows. A totally incorrect reason for putting this law in place. And the worst part is that when you reverse this credit, since you have not paid, you have to pay interest. Later, when you pay, you can take the credit, but what happens to the interest? Now we'll have to apply for refund, go to the courts to get the benefit. Retrospective amendments have to be done. Unnecessarily, these bureaucrats have made GST into a litigation-prone tax. Much more litigation than central excise is going to happen in GST, thanks to the short-term target-based views of the department. Can I have banking where I have a 50% option because my interest is not liable? They have given a scheme where I can take 50% credit. In one state, I have only 100%. That means all my taxation is applicable. I don't have any exempt. Can I take a 100% option in that state and opt for 50% in the other state? This may be possible. In motor vehicles, many people are losing credit, especially the transportation sector. They don't take credit of the motor vehicles. They don't take credit. Consequently, they can't take credit of the insurance, the spares they buy for the motor vehicles, the servicing. Many times people are making transportation agreements for leasing out, which is catastrophic. They won't take the credit. They will charge on reverse charge, that is the customer, and later the hirer will be liable at 18% and possibly credit also will be denied. Unreasonable laws. The court will rule that there is a leeway to read it down, just as it has done in in one of the case of cement steel for construction industry. Food and beverages, outdoor catering, all these, I don't spend money for my business, which is not used in business. However, they have put restrictions. But if it is mandatory, then I can do it. Or if I do some planning, I can do it. For example, if I supply foods, beverages, outdoor catering, then I'm not eligible. However, if I give training in which all of this is there, then I'm eligible. Ridiculous type of laws they have made, unnecessary restriction. Insurance, accident insurance, health insurance, life insurance paid by the company. Obviously, company is not paying just like that. They want the employees to be happy. They want them to be safe and they want them to concentrate on working. But they have put a restriction here also. Today, after this pandemic came, from 1st April, health insurance taken for pandemic is also eligible. Therefore, wherever it's mandated, it's available. This is something we have to remember. We should ensure that such credits we should not lose. There is also a good article by my partner, the link of which I have put in this particular slide. Capital goods credit should be available for many, and even today it is available clearly. For example, I am putting up a building in which there is access control system. There is a conveyor belt. there is a travel letter, there are lifts, there are pipelines for ducting to carry this central uh, power, not power, sorry, central air conditioning. All this is eligible for credit as capital goods, and it's available under the law itself. Many people do not take credit of this. This is anyway clearly available, unlike the cement steel credit, which has come through a decision of the Orissa High Court, which is before the Supreme Court, where you might have to avail the credit and reverse. In the case of plant and machinery, you need not reverse at all. You can take the credit. When you are reversing, the law has provided a particular method, which is quite illogical in my understanding. I'm not going to go through this example, but you could work on it on your own. And you could possibly also refer to the webcast which I've put in this for understanding this particular provision. Many people make mistakes in this, and they end up not availing the credit which is correct, or availing excess credit which will later get reversed with 24% interest and possible penalty. With this, I would like to get to the resources. You have a large number of resources which are available. Again, I'm not going to read all these. You could refer to it. There is also a link I have provided. We have a small academy where we are looking at enhancing the potential of people for employability, whether it is in for career or for providing services to the clients. A professional section is there in which some empowering articles are there, including on the ITC. Thank you very much for a patient hearing, and I hope that you are able to add value to your clients or your employers and empower yourself with this particular knowledge. Thank you very much.